So my name is Valeriano Ramos. I'm the Director of Strategic Alliances at Everyday Democracy. And I want to welcome all of you to this Meet Our New Anchor Partners Confab. This is actually an opportunity for us to meet our three new anchors, Project Ujima in Ohio, Montana State University Extension Community Development in Montana, and South Dakota State University Extension in South Dakota. And also to learn about the excellent work they're doing with communities to support their capacity for dialogue to change work. Before we get started, I want to share with you some housekeeping and technical information. Hello? I heard something. Hello?
Can you hear us?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Who's this?
I think other people are joining. This is Beth Broadway.
Hi, Beth.
Hi.
Wonderful. Great to have you here. Excellent. I think we have most of the anchors. That's wonderful. Okay, so let's turn our attention to the slide that gives you information about the housekeeping. So this meeting is being recorded. So please mute yourself unless you're speaking to reduce background noise. Your audio video controls are on the lower left corner of your screen. You can minimize or move your video boxes at any time by going to the top section of your screen. And please hold your questions until the end of the three presentations to make sure that we give our speakers opportunity to share information. But please make sure that you jot the questions down somewhere, or you can also go to the bottom of the screen where it says chat, and you can write your questions there, and we will retrieve them at the end of the presentations. Any questions about the housekeeping? Okay.
Nope.
Okay, so Sandy, we have the next slide. Okay, yeah, that's the housekeeping. Excellent. So here you see a map, and this map is really illustrates where our 7 anchor partners are located. You see them in the color orange. New Hampshire Listens, West Virginia Center for Civic Life, Interfaith Works of Central New York, El Hindi Dialogue Center, Community Partners of West Palm Beach in Florida, Project Ujima in Ohio, Montana State University Extension in Montana, and South Dakota State University. So that, it also shows states where we have network consultants or senior associates, and some of these consultants are also in the same states as some of our anchors. For example, in Ohio, we have Frank Frazier, who is one of our senior associates there. So that's an example of some anchors who are also located in a state with an anchor. I share this map with you to illustrate how Everyday Democracy is building a national civic infrastructure and network of trainers, coaches, and consultants to build civic capacity in communities for dialogue to change work with a racial equity lens. So it really shows the scope of our network, and it will continue to grow. We are constantly cultivating new prospective anchors, and in fact, we have someone from the San Diego Deliberation Network here with us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Mary Thompson, San Diego Deliberation Network. We were founded 4 years ago in concert with the Kettering Foundation, and our goal is to bring local issues into deliberation by the community. We're currently trying to get purchase on a housing initiative to talk about a very serious problem in our state and probably elsewhere, affordable housing.
Wonderful, it's great to have you here. Thank you. So at this point, I want to introduce our first speaker, our first anchor partner, Crystal Jones. Is the executive director and co-founder of Project Ujima, based in Akron, Ohio. And Crystal received her undergraduate degree summa cum laude from SUNY Buffalo, and her law degree cum laude from the University of Houston School of Law, where she was also associate editor of the Houston Law Review. She holds law practice licenses in the states of Ohio and Texas. She co-founded Project Ujima in 2011, and over the years, she has served the community in a number of ways, both in the legal field and as a community activist. We have a very loud noise, so hopefully, if people could mute, that would be good. Thank you. She has served as court-appointed attorney and guardian ad litem with the Summit County Juvenile Court. He's also been an adjunct faculty and visiting professor at the University of Akron School of Law, and also serves on the scholarship and college access as coordinator for Project RAP in Akron. Yeah, if you could mute the mics, because that noise is pretty loud. Okay, thank you. In her work with Project
Crystal, Sandy aren't muted.
Okay, great. In her work with Project Ujima, Ms. Jones also serves as facilitator and trainer for a number of dialogue circle initiatives. And Krista has been married for 42 years to her high school sweetheart, Mike Jones. And together the couple has 2 sons, Jason and Justin. Krista will talk about the important work of Project Ujima. And I want to welcome you, Crystal, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Val. And thank you to Everyday Democracy. We are so happy to have this opportunity to become an anchor partner. We want to welcome also the other anchor partners and say how much we're looking forward to us sharing and learning together. So I'd like to always first start off by explaining what Ujima means, because people have problems pronouncing it and they're not quite sure what it means. But basically, Project Ujima is a grassroots community engagement organization. And basically, we teach and facilitate circle processes to enable diverse groups of citizens to come together to discuss issues of shared concern, develop relationships of trust, and then go from talk to action. So we're named after the 3rd principle of Kwanzaa, Ujima. Ujima is a key Swahili word which means collective work and responsibility. And the fuller definition is to build and maintain our community together and make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems and to solve them together. So basically, we thrive through the collective work of the people, as we say, in the community or in the village. And we also have a community vision statement that we developed as a community when we first started, that sort of serves as our beacon light or our driving force to dictate and to help us keep ourselves on track in terms of what we're supposed to be about. So at all of our events and gatherings, we have an opening ritual where we, one, recite the definition of Ujima in unison, and we recite our community vision statement just as a way of helping us to remember why we're here and what is driving our work together. So we basically have 3 areas of service that kind of has evolved. And again, as Val said, we started in 2011 with a pretty large grant from the Knight Foundation, about a $674,000 grant from the Knight Foundation to basically, it started out to engage our schools, which we got new schools and they were named community learning centers instead of schools. So the question was, well, how do we make those schools live up to the new name of community learning center? So that's how we got started. Now, since then we've evolved. We've kind of always asked ourselves, are we about process or are we about programs? And it turns out we're about both. We're moving more into process as opposed to programs, and we just want to support programs that are already happening or new ideas that people have and help them go from talk to action. Our 3 major areas of service, again, we call them circle services. And again, that's where we facilitate, we provide facilitation for community discussions, facilitator training. We have training sessions to help people learn how to facilitate circle dialogues. And then we have programming. So we do have some programs that we continue to support and to coordinate. So just to go over those a little bit more in depth, and Val or anybody, give me the hook anytime. I didn't have time to time this, and so if I look like I'm going long, and I'll try to be mindful. I meant to turn on my my timer, but I didn't. And so circle services are basically, we provide, again, facilitation for community discussions and also for specific organizational community events. We are moving, as we have moved away from that wonderful funding that we got from the Knight Foundation, we are looking to do some fee for service, basically to have our Project Ujima and the services that we offer be an asset to the community. And then often we are able to negotiate either a grant or some type of contract in order to make sure that we can keep our doors open and our staff intact. Grassroots community organizations, as we all know, it's difficult to keep going often once the initial funding is gone. So on our fee for service, we have done a number of things. We have a contract with Akron Public Schools. 2 of our high schools merged here in the city, and it was a very controversial, emotional decision because, of course, as you can imagine, if some of the alumni, their identity was tied to their schools. So we did some. First we got the kids together and the students together. We had them brought to a neutral site, and we kind of found out what they felt about it. And so we did 15 circle dialogues with just the students from the 2 schools. Well, actually it was 4 schools because it was the middle school as well. And then after that, we had community dialogues for the community to come together and to really kind of talk about, so what can we do as a community to support the students as they move into this merged school? And that was done last summer, and this year is the first year for the merged schools to be in the same building. And we've done some training of the students as well as the community on how to facilitate circles to talk about issues as they emerge during the school year. We also work with the city of Akron with their youth violence prevention. They're developing a strategic plan, and Ujima was hired to facilitate the development of the strategic plan to help all voices be heard. We actually went into the juvenile detention centers to have some conversations with the youth in detention, so to make sure that their voices are heard in the development of this plan. We had community discussions, and of course the folks who are on the committee, their voices were heard as well. And those are primarily organizations, agencies, government officials who are very much committed to development of this plan. It's almost done, and at least the first version of the plan. And then we do a number of other things with our fee for service, or with our circle services. Not all of it is fee. We just had a big, what we call Teach In on April 28th, and it was in collaboration with the University of Akron. It was really looking at Dr. King's Beyond looking at his I Have a Dream speech, but really kind of looking at, well, what happens beyond the dream? We hear so much about the speech, but so this teach-in, again, in collaboration with one of the professors at the University of Akron, over 100 folks on a Saturday came in. We watched a clip of Dr. King when he talked about the 2 Americas. This was the focus of his life toward the end of his life, which is anti-poverty. And then we had circles where we talked about poverty, health disparities, and educational disparities. And Ujima provided the facilitators for the conversations. And so now the question is always, and that's one of the things we're anxious to learn more about, is how do you take these conversations and actually go from talk to action, or as we said with Everyday Democracy, dialogue to change. It always seems that there's such momentum generated during the event, but then the follow-up is where the challenge happens. We've been, as Val knows and others know, that we've done race dialogues, racism dialogues with our infant mortality initiative, using the Everyday Democracy issue guide, Facing Racism in a Diverse Nation. Those have been dynamic and enlightening and somewhat difficult and painful, but the discussions have been great. We really had gotten funding for that from Ohio Department of Medicaid to talk about racism and infant mortality. That funding has ceased for the second biennium, but we still would like to keep those conversations going. We also do pregnancy and parenting centering circles. That's, again, looking at the infant mortality issue. The area that Project Ujima is located in, which is area codes 44307 and 44320 in Akron, have the highest instances or rates of infant mortality in the state of Ohio. And so we provide circle services to bring the women together as they are pregnant. We partner with SUMA. The women come, they get their checkups, and then they circle up, and we facilitate a conversation where they can develop this sisterhood of support and education and all the things that, or at least some of the things that they need to help to make sure that their babies live and thrive beyond in the first year of life into adulthood. We also have peace circles with the Summit County Juvenile Court. This is a diversionary program to help youth who might typically get into the system, and the statistics show that youth of color get into the system far more than their white counterparts. And so these peace circles allow the youth to come, and we talk about, it's a restorative justice concept. We talk about what happened, and again, the community is there, the youth are there, their family, friends, and supporters, the victim if it's a victim crime, and really just trying to come up with a plan that will allow the youth to restore him or herself to wholeness, as well as the community, and not get caught up in the justice system where, you know, as we know, typically then they just become hardened criminals often. So that's our circle services. Our facilitator training, again, I mentioned some of the training that we've done with the school merger. We also do an annual, what we call moderator training. And that's basically a free training where we offer it to anyone in the community who wants to come and learn how to facilitate circle dialogues where all voices are equal, all voices are heard. As you all probably experience as well, people will come, but often they come with pain and they want to have their say, but often we lack the means to help them go from passion to process to change. And so we really want to equip as many people in our community to be able to facilitate those kinds of discussions. And we also did a peace circle training just recently with the community. This is again with the school merger. We had the educators, parents, community residents, students, two separate trainings with the students to help them again talk about those difficult issues. And a lot of them are relational. You know, how do we get along with each other? How do we respect each other's different voices and perspectives? And so the more folks we have in our community who can help facilitate that kind of discussion, the better. And lastly, with our programming, we have African American Read-In, which we have book discussions about 5 months out of the year, where we are celebrating books by African American authors. We're really trying to model what we say about reading being very, very difficult, very, very important, and often it's a difficulty that many of our students have, reading at below grade level, and often it's because reading does not happen in the home. So we want to support reading and at the same time support African American authors. This is largely an African American community. We have Saturday morning wellness circles. Every Saturday we do Qigong and Tai Chi. This is again tied to our infant mortality. It's really particularly to help residents deal with the physical and mental toll that racism continues to have on people of color. So we talk about the fight or flight syndrome. How do you manage stress? How do you manage situations where you feel that you're being unjustly treated so that it doesn't have an adverse effect on your mental and physical health? And then lastly, we have a restoration, park restoration project that we're doing. It's a flower garden in a community park that had fallen into disrepair and neglect. And so we have a flower garden there every year. And then we have a Kwanzaa Ujima night as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. This is all really outstanding work, Crystal. And
thank you.
I had a chance when I visited there to meet your board, and you have really a dynamic board of directors, educators, you know, community leaders, faith group leaders, and just volunteers, people who have been with Project Ujima for many years, and they're very committed to your work. Yeah. And it's really outstanding work. So we want to thank you. And there will be some questions for you as soon as I see a few questions in the chat room there. So
thank you.
Sharing that information with us.
Thanks, Val.
Thank you. And so now, before I introduce the other two anchor partners, and they're both extension service institutions, I want to talk a little bit about the Horizons program, through which Everyday Democracy first began working with these two institutions about 15 years ago. For those who don't know, Horizons was a multi-year community leadership initiative designed and launched by the Northwest Area Foundation in 2003. There were 8 states that were part of that initiative: Oregon, Washington, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Idaho, and Minnesota. So it was really the entire Northwest section of the country. And Every Democracy and the Pew Partnership for Civic Change partnered with NWAF in this effort, which was delivered by a number of nonprofits, tribal colleges, and also, as I said, State University Extension Services. Horizons was designed to build community leadership and capacity to address poverty in small, rural, and reservation communities. It was predicated on the theory that communities already possess many of the assets and skills to arrest social and economic decline, and that they can, with leadership training, resources, and support, craft and implement a shared community vision to address poverty in meaningful ways. As many as 283 low-resource, small, rural, and reservation communities completed the Horizons program. 283, that's a significant number. The map you see illustrates the scope of this major initiative. Horizons 1, the pilot project, concluded in 2005 and involved 44 communities. Horizons 2 was completed in 2008 and engaged 140 communities. Horizons 3 concluded in April 2010, with 99 communities completing the entire program sequence. Now, the Horizons program provided leadership training, focused conversation and learning about rural poverty, and coaching, training, and resources to help the participating rural and reservation communities take steps to address poverty. Over 100,000 people, close to 30% of the population of the 283 communities, participated in this program. That's over 100,000 people. Very impressive. For more information on the Horizons program, you can go to the link. And I believe Sandy has put already the link there. And that link is actually for a report that was published, an evaluation report that really summarizes the initiative, the work that was done, and the impact that it had in those 8 states. So I encourage you to go to learn more about the program. And we are fortunate to have 2 of those extension institutions that we partner with in Horizons: Montana State University Extension and South Dakota State University Extension. And they are the two first extension anchor partners. We are hoping to be able to bring other extensions from that region to join us in the Anchors Network. So we're delighted to have them here. I am very pleased to introduce Carrie O'Neill, Extension Field Specialist at South Dakota State University Extension. And I'm going to give a very brief bio on her. Carrie has a master's degree in education, and she has been with the South Dakota State University Extension since 2002. There, she has directed the Character Counts Youth Project for 3 years, then became one of the founders of the Community Development Extension Initiative. From 2004 through to 2010, she directed the Horizons Project there at South Dakota, which received the U.S. Department of Agriculture Innovative Program Award. That project is still operating in the communities that were part of Horizons today. Carrie's main interests are leadership development, strategic planning, and public issues. Carrie will talk about important work of the extension and how it continues to build capacity for dialogue to change in South Dakota. So I want to welcome and thank you, Carrie, for joining us today. Carrie, you there?
Now, can you hear me? Okay,
Yeah,
thank you. I was saying it's very good to be here, and it's good to meet others of you that are doing important work. So I'm going to start with just a little bit of background about what Extension is. The Cooperative Extension Program actually is a federal program, and it happens through land-grant universities in every state. So in South Dakota State University is our land-grant institution, which means that it really tries to take the research and the work of the university out into the greater parts of the state that don't have direct asset or access to that institution. Brookings is our land grant university location, and that is way on the eastern side of South Dakota. I'm located more on the western side of the state, and so our ability to get those resources and that new research out to people all across the state is what we try to do through the Extension Service. In South Dakota, we have 8 extension centers. I am not located in a center. I'm on my own out here in Martin because we're a very sparsely populated area, but I think we're very important. My home lies on the western edge of the Rosebud Indian Reservation, and we're very close in Martin to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And so those Lakota reservation communities, many of them come to Martin as their center for business. And so I think I'm in a very strategic place to be able to interact with Native American communities, rural people, farmers and ranchers, all kinds of people who are not necessarily part of the urban areas, which we only have 2 of in South Dakota. So anyway, just to go over a few things of what we do, we are called Community Vitality Field Specialists under the Extension Service. There are 4 of us in the state right now, hopefully 5 very soon. We're interviewing soon. But we do a lot of work with rural communities and organizations around helping them plan. It might be planning for their organization in the future, strategic planning, or it might be planning for projects that they'd like to do. One of the really important things that I'm involved with right now is a cohort process called the Change Network through the Bush Foundation in St. Paul, Minnesota. Bush Foundation does a lot of service in South Dakota. They have a lot of grants going on right now. And the Change Network is a group of 14 individuals all around the state who are working especially with inclusion, diversity, and equity. So that process has been super exciting. It just started last year with our first cohort group. We're convening again in June, and then the individuals in that cohort will have projects that get approved by National Art Strategies, who is our leader in that cohort process. And then we'll start round 2 of a cohort process. So that has been one of the things that has kept us really grounded in the whole diversity and inclusion and equity issues, as well as being connected constantly, I think, to Everyday Democracy. We use a lot of their materials. One of the things that happened through Horizons was the process of study circles, and we actually used new material that Everyday Democracy developed at that time for thriving communities. That was the piece of Horizons that all of the communities in South Dakota said they liked the best, was the study circle process. And so since then, we've worked on developing new study guides. We've done the racial study circles in a couple of communities. They've both been border communities to reservations, which have been very successful. We've also developed our own study guide called Marketing Hometown America, which really focuses on communities who want to attract new residents. Several of our smaller rural communities, especially out in the western part of the state, they get tourists in during the summertime, but the tourists might come and go. So we decided that really focusing on not just trying to attract people to come to your town and then go home again, we'd like to attract new residents to our communities. If you're at all familiar with South Dakota, you know that we are sparsely populated, although we have a large land area. Our #1 industry is agriculture, which many states can't say that anymore. So we are very rural, and we're very proud of that fact. But we always are trying to find ways to attract new residents or to call back alumni who have perhaps moved to a bigger community or out of state for jobs, and when they have families kind of think, you know, maybe I'd like to move back to my hometown. So we try to help small towns have things there, have amenities or have jobs or things that new young families can come back for. So that's been a really fun study guide. We've had probably 8 or 10 communities in the state go through that process, and we're kind of following up with those communities to see what's happened as a result. Just last week, we put on a conference which was called Energize, Exploring Innovative Rural Communities. And the cool thing about that conference is we had it in DeSmet, South Dakota, which has a population of just over 1,000 people. But they've done some really innovative things in that community. They've raised money to put up an event and wellness center that we used as our center for the conference. And then we had 16 different breakout sessions. People could choose for between 4 at a time. And those breakout sessions were held inside small businesses. So that conference was very successful. People loved the atmosphere. And we'll probably do that again next year on the western side of the state. South Dakota is one of those states that if you are a resident here, the terms East River and West River are very familiar to you because the Missouri River kind of divides us in half. And the people who live East River or West River take on certain characteristics that are unique to their regions. But so really Extension, our main job, our mission is to be responsive to the people of the state. So that means our projects and programs change from time to time. Our anchors, which is a good word today, are really helping rural organizations and communities to thrive. And so we do constantly help them to do planning, organizing, build leadership skills. Those are kind of our anchors. And we also do some small business basics classes, but our other projects can change depending on what our citizens tell us that they need. For example, right now, I've been working very closely with local foods projects around the state. We started a food hub in the southeastern part of the state around the Sioux Falls area. So that's kind of, when I say I work in public issues, that's kind of what that means is right now local foods is a hot topic public issue. And I see coming down the road more work on diversity and inclusion as a public issue, kind of a process. So we work on processes, we work on projects, and it's a fun job because we get to be flexible and change depending on what the needs of the state come up to be. So I've worked here a long time. I worked in Minnesota before with Extension, but it's like having several different jobs because it changes and it keeps being energizing. So I guess I'll stop there. And if anyone has questions later, I'd be happy to try to answer some of those. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Carrie, and it's great the work you're doing over there. Obviously, the work you did with Horizons too, which is still bearing fruit. So we want to thank you for sharing that information with us. Thank you again. And so now I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Paul LaChapelle, who is Extension Community Development Specialist and also a member of the faculty at Montana State University Extension, based in Bozeman, Montana. And Paul works in partnership with the local government center, who, by the way, is run by Dan Clark, who is also someone who was very involved in Horizons. And Paul's responsibilities involve providing research, technical assistance, and training on various community development topics in communities across the state. Paul earned his PhD at the University of Montana College of Forestry and Conservation in 2006. And I believe, Paul, you've been with MSUE since 2006, is that right? And so Paul will talk about the work, Montana State University Extension, Community Development. Paul, welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Paul? Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good, okay. Well, great. You can still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm so sorry. Yeah, we have limited cell and internet availability here. Well, greetings, everybody. I'm calling you from the Fort Peck Indian Reservation in northeastern Montana. And I'm in the town of Poplar, Montana. It's population 810. It's a very rural area here, and very happy to be with you. I'll just mirror the statements that Carrie and Crystal made. Very glad to be a part of this partnership and be contributing and learning with you all. I'll just talk briefly. Carrie did a great job explaining what extension is, and maybe I'll just kind of talk specifically about some of the programs, including what I'm doing here with the Assiniboine and Sioux tribes with this current trip. We do have 4 program areas in extension and community development being one of them. The other 3 being youth development and 4-H, family and consumer science, and agriculture being the third. Here in Montana, community development is the smallest program. I'm the only specialist with statewide responsibilities, and we have 3. We used to have 4 agents that are county-based or community-based. We now have 3 agents that have community and economic development responsibilities. In terms of some of the partners, institutional and organizational partners, we really strive to partner and collaborate with as many organizations as we can, local, state, regional, and beyond. So, for example, with this current project that I'm on the Fort Peck Reservation, working, of course, with the tribe, Department of Commerce out here, and area local development, economic development corporations. So the focus of my work here for the next 3 days is engaging the community in a series of what we're calling discovery sessions to talk about economic development issues and opportunities. And we'll be having a series of community meetings that are based at different locations across the reservation and the community here. I also have a number of other programs that I'll talk about in just a moment. But in terms of other partnerships, Carrie mentioned that we try to extend the resources of the university to our communities, and in doing so, we partner with faculty across our university and with faculty at other universities. So at the moment, I'm involved in a number of grants with faculty at the University of Idaho, University of Wyoming, Penn State, and Cornell. And much of this information is about my grants are on the website. We also partner with extension organizations across the United States. And so we have a national professional organization called NACDEP is the acronym. It's the National Association of Community Development Extension Professionals, as well as some other associations. And so we really strive to share information and resources with our colleagues across nationally across the land grant university system. I'm also partnering with colleagues internationally, and I'm the president currently of the International Association for Community Development, and we serve as the global network of community development practitioners, and it's just a very rich network of individuals involved in community development work around the world. In terms of community capacity building, Val had asked that we just talk about and offer a few examples of our community capacity building work. I wanted to first just talk about how we define community in our fields. In community development, we often think of community in terms of a place, a geographic place, and that's commonly how we define community. But we also define community in terms of interest. So that could be, a number of people that get together and talk about affordable housing issues. We talk about community and define community in terms of identity, how a group of people identify themselves. So that could be around LGBTQ issues. And then we define community in terms of practice. So a community of practice maybe being a community of engineers or community development practitioners. And same, and I'm sure many of you recognize that we talk about community capacity building in terms of kind of a systems approach and kind of all of the capital or assets that are in a community. So not just the financial capital, but also the built capital, the natural capital that's in a community, the social capital, the human capital, political capital, and what many consider to be the most important capital, the cultural capital, that glue that holds us together, the customs, the rituals, the things that we do and practice together as a group of people. Just a few examples of some of the programs that I'm working on that I think have relevancy to the work in everyday democracy, and I think others that, of you that are doing. We're currently working on a community leadership program based in communities and trying to reach individuals like we did with the Horizons program to learn about their communities, to build relationships and those networks that are so important to bridge some of the conflicts that exist. And so we've got with a small group of community faculty, community development faculty, we're working on implementing, we have two communities now that are implementing community leadership programs and trying to work with another dozen faculty in communities to implement a community leadership program. And I'd be happy to talk in more detail about that another time. But it has many of the aspects of community and leadership capacity building in terms of communication, dealing with conflict, having a vision of the future, and ultimately linking knowledge to action and executing a plan. I'm also working with StoryCorps. Some of you may be familiar with the StoryCorps program that's on public television and public radio, and I've created a community here called the Montana Community Story Project. I have a site on the StoryCorps website. It's called a community on the community on the StoryCorps site, and it's a collection of stories around the state. And I'm trying to teach people the value of stories and storytelling as a way to bridge differences, to gain understanding. And I think that there's great potential in trying to use this platform and this approach to growing our understanding in communities. Val asked us to talk a little bit about what we find challenging in doing our work, and I guess just briefly, what's probably the most challenging aspect of work in this area is just the traditional and conservative populations here in the state. And as an example, we've tried to move some programs forward on the topic of climate change. I currently have a grant writing a understanding climate and climate issues. And we've had resistance from here in the university as well as community members. It's just trying to overcome that traditional those traditional populations and come up with innovative programs and techniques that are communities can find accepting. And I guess the last thing I'll share with you, Val asked us also to talk about one brief story of success that we'd like to share. And I'd just like to talk, kind of circle back to the work I'm doing here on the Fort Peck Reservation. I've also worked on the Crow Indian Reservation, and the successes, as difficult as it is to work on the Indian reservations in our state, it's been greatly satisfying in terms of bringing people together to talk about issues of race and equity and disparity. In the case here at Fort Peck, we're talking about economic disparity. On the Crow Indian Reservation, my focus has been on health disparities. But there's a small group of individuals that are very committed, and it gives me great hope, and I think the individuals I'm working with here, great hope to try to address and overcome some of the challenges that we're dealing with on our federally recognized tribes. So with that, Val, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you for your patience with the technology issues. And again, look forward to any questions or comments from any of you.
Great, great. Thank you very much, Paul. And it's wonderful that you're sharing this information. I actually, when you mentioned the work you're doing around health disparities, I couldn't help but think about Project Ujima and the work that Project Ujima is doing on infant mortality. So this might be an opportunity for both anchors to exchange notes and learn from each other as well. And what are some strategies for addressing disparities in your communities? For those of you who want to learn more about the anchor partners, you can go to the website, the anchor's website, Everyday Democracy, which is everyday-democracy.org/anchors-program. You can also go to the websites, and I believe in the slides, Sandy had put in the links, msuextension.org is for Montana, and then the other ones she did also include the websites. So at this point, we have about 10 minutes for Q&A, and before that, again, I want to thank all of you, Crystal, Paul, and Carrie for sharing that information with us. Thank you again, and I'll open it up to questions from anyone.
Everyone should be unmuted, so feel free to pipe in.
Beth, in Syracuse, Paul, I wonder if the curriculum on the youth literacy program on climate change is available online.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
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 Great. It's still under development. It's for grades 3 through 5. I'd be happy to share it with you. We will be posting it on our website as soon as we develop it. We're just testing the 6 modules now, and we're talking about weather and weather variability. But we're moving from weather to climate so that youth can understand the difference between those topics. But I think this is an area, I know that Everyday Democracy has touched on the topic, and I think that this is going to be increasingly relevant. I'm working with communities now on urban resiliency programs and their public works and other programs. I think this is going to be a topic that we will and have to address. So thanks for your interest, and be happy to share that with you offline, and will be available on my website down the road, probably 3 or 4 months.
Thank you.
Any other questions? While people think about questions, one thing I should mention is that Carrie, Paul, and I, and Dan Clark also, from Montana State and South Dakota State Extensions, we are in a planning group to try to hold a convening of the former Horizons extensions. Our hope was to do it this fall, but because of scheduling issues, we will probably do it next May of 2019. So that will be an opportunity to bring all of those extensions that were part of Horizons together, and as a way to really continue to build leadership and learning around climate change, but also to explore ways that we can collaborate and perhaps bring some more of the extensions into the Anchors network. Any questions from anyone else? We have about 5 minutes, so we have time for a couple.
Val, I just wanted to, I don't have a question so much as a comment, just hearing from the other anchor partners, and I'm sure we all can sort of identify one of the challenges. Basically, it sounds like we're having great conversations all over. And so this is a wonderful opportunity to basically hear what happens after the conversation in various places, and for us to continue to learn. One of the things that we want to make sure that we do here with Ujima is not only provide programming, but provide empowerment. In other words, so that when folks come to the table or come to the circle, they understand that we all have a role to play in addressing whatever the issue is, and not, and to sort of dispel the myth or the feeling that, there's this savior outside of our community who's going to come in and ride in on a horse and save us all. And so that's been a real challenge, partly because as people struggle to meet day-to-day needs, then their ability and their capacity to really kind of roll up their sleeves to really be actively involved in working on solutions has been challenging and continues to be. And we do recognize that developing the relationships is like at the foundation of most of what we do.
So much, Crystal. That's really wonderful. Wonderful comments. Anyone else? Martha?
Val, this is Martha. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I just wanted to say, while so many folks are on the line at the same time, how great it is that the anchor partners are together in this way, and looking forward to a time when we can be together in person. But just hearing the challenges and the successes in these very different, but also with some similar kinds of issues that people are facing, it's very exciting to think about the way we could be sharing lessons, not just among the new anchors, but among everyone. So I just wanted to say hi to everyone and welcome to the new anchors, and welcome back to the anchors who've already been with us.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you so much. We have another 2 minutes or so. Any other questions or comments?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So if you do have questions for the other anchors, we will send you. Actually, there is a list of the contact information for all the anchors on the website. I mentioned everyday-democracy.org/anchors-program, and you can go there to get information about each of the anchors and also get their email addresses. So we've come to the end of the Zoom meeting, and I want to thank all our 3 guest speakers, Crystal Jones, Paul LaChapelle, and Carrie O'Neill, for participating, and all of you also for joining us. Before we adjourn, however, I would like to announce that we will be offering a webinar on evaluation design to our anchor partners on June 20th. So please jot down the date, June 20th. We don't know the time yet, but we will be sending you an email in the next few days. And that will have information on that webinar. And that will be an opportunity to learn about how to design evaluation processes, which I know is an area of interest. Also in the future, in the fall, we're going to do a webinar on action planning and implementation, which I know is an area that is of interest to all of the anchors. So at this point, unless I hear any last comments, questions, any last remarks? At this point, I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and thanks for being part of this Confab. Have a wonderful week, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
It's great to meet everybody.
Nice to meet everybody. All right.